Morning, everybody. Today we're going to talk about black swan events and what are black swan events. This is regards to uh, the stock market for the most part. And what it is that the stock market will come down in value. It could come down very sharply. It could go down drastically. But the reason for it is there was an event, some kind of unexpected incident occurred globally. like, I'll give you a couple examples. Say the pandemic. That was a black swan event. And why do they call it black swans? Well, it in you know hundreds of years ago, people believed that only swans were the color white, and there was no other color of swan until they discovered in Australia that actually swans can be black. So there can be black swans. It was totally unexpected, that, and that was the idea of black swan events. They're totally unexpected, and they have an impact on the stock market. So the pandemic was a black swan event. Um, the housing crisis of 2008. The economic uh, crisis of 2008. That was a black swan event. Um, the 9/11 terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center. That was a 9/11 event. These things cause drastic drops into the stock market. Now, the stock market can have a correction, which is about 10%, and that routinely happens. Um, you'll have a bull market, where the stock keeps going up and then it'll go into correction territory at 10%. But when a black swan event occurs, it could go down 20% or more. And you think, well, this is good to know. What does it have to do with being an owner operator? Well, I often recommend to owner operators to save their money and invest it. And if you are investing in stocks, then part of your strategy should be take advantage of these black swan events. And this will help you in several ways with your business. For example, you want to reach $100,000 in your investment portfolio as recommended by Charlie Munger, who's the partner of Warren Buffett at Berkshire Hathaway. How are you going to get to $100,000? You could save your money or you could grow your money. And one way you could grow your money is, you know, take advantage of these black swan events and buy the stocks when they're on sale. And then typically what happens is that the stock market rebounds, and then you made all that profit. You took advantage of that opportunity. You bought the dip. So this is the idea. And then you also got to think about, as an owner operator, managing your money. You want to build your savings. You want to be able to afford expensive truck repairs, or maybe you want to save money for a down payment on another truck. How are you going to do this? Year over year. You could save your money from your earnings, but you can also grow your money by investing. So this is why we want to, be aware of what black swan events are, and see that as an opportunity where we can grow our investment portfolios. So part of this is the rise of the retail investor, which is using platforms like E-Trade, Robinhood, maybe Chase Bank, or other financial institutions. Almost every bank has a brokerage account feature where you can buy stocks, and this has really grown over the years. When I started investing, you know, probably about 10 years ago, you used to have to pay a commission fee every time you purchased or sold your stock. It could be 20 bucks, for example. And then with competition, these platforms had to innovate, and then they started offering free, and then it just really took off from there. People were having portfolios, and and buying stock. And this was the rise of the retail investor. And the retail investor can have a huge impact on these uh, black swan events or dips in the market because prices go down. What happens? The retail investors buy the dip. So but you got to think of strategy, because obviously in order to buy, you got to have money saved. So yes, we want to grow our portfolios to at least $100,000 invested, but we also want to have money saved up in a high yield savings account. And that could be several $1,000s or more. And then when these black swan events occur or these dips or corrections occur, you can start thinking about taking some of that money out of your high yield savings account and taking advantage of the dip in the market. So, these things do occur. Black swan events do occur. They are unexpected. Um, there are other types of swan events as well. Some people, speculate that there could be gray swan events, which means is that it wasn't drastic like a black swan event, but it was kind of like forecasted that this was going to happen. you know, so like when the tariffs were announced and the stock market dropped, you could say that was a black swan event, or you could say that maybe was kind of like a gray swan because that was kind of predictable. Black swan events are typically unpredictable. So there are things that are on the horizon that could lead to future black swan events. War is a big one, and we're seeing some conflict in the Mid East right now. But you see like Russia and Ukraine. If China were to invade Taiwan, for example, these things could all become black swan events. And then as an investor, you need to have that money saved and ready to go, because you won't have any advance warning that the stock market's going to go down. So you want to be ready to buy at any given time. So that means you got to save your money. You got to think strategically. So you want to take advantage of the buying opportunities. You want to grow your portfolio. You want to participate in the stock market. You want to try to get ahead of the game. You got to learn what black swan events are and start preparing for them before they happen. All right, guys, that's all I got for you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the internet.